we jump into this Tyranid Tactica video, got to give a shout out to our patrons, Brian and Teos. Your support means so much to us. We've been able to upgrade some of the equipment here in the basement, such as getting a gimbal to provide some smooth pan over shots of the table, and I'm excited to use it in today's Tactica video. So your support means so much. If you want to become a patron and unlock some cool benefits, such as getting involved in our battle reports, getting a named model that gets called out, or having a Patronic dice, check out the link in the video description below. But let's jump into it. So today, as you can see, we are talking about the Tyranid Zoanthrope. This is a unit that I've been very fond of since starting 40k back in 6th edition. So of course, moving into 9th edition, I'm going to find a way to make this unit work, and I want to share my experiences with you. So if you're new to Tyranids, or if you're just looking for a way to make the Zoanthrope work, this video is for you. So we're going to cover a few different things as always in our Tactica videos. We're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the unit, talk about the psychic powers, go over what hive fleets work best with this unit, at least the ones that I've found. And then we're going to talk about some tactics as well, to show some placement on how to, again, most effectively utilize the Zoanthrope for yourself. So let's jump into this video and talk about the advantages of the psychic powerhouse that is the Zoanthrope. All right, so let's talk advantages with the Zoanthrope. So the one up front is that the Zoanthropes get not Smite, but it's called Warp Blast. That's a upgraded version of Smite, which has 24-inch range. So right there is a huge advantage. It lets the Zoanthropes kind of improve their positioning on the table and still slap those smites down as well. So the smites can also be upgraded in terms of the damage they can put out. With them, the more you take, the higher the damage it is. So running 3 Zoanthropes will just either do a standard smite in terms of damage, just D3, still the 24-inch range. Bringing 4 to 5 Zoanthropes also unlocks a secondary power that can be cast in addition to Warp Blast, instead of having to choose 2 powers or spend a CP to fire off another power. And then bringing, and it's D3 plus D3 damage with 4 to 5 when casting the Warp Blast Smite. And then bringing 6 of these guys unlocks D3 plus flat 3 mortal wounds on Smite going off. So right there, tons of psychic damage that can come out. The other thing with these guys, they have a 3-up invul save, 3 wounds apiece. So very durable, very handy to hold objectives. That's another advantage with them as well. When choosing the right hive fleet, they can be very hard to clear off objectives, which is very, very rewarding, and also lets them stay, for the most part. I mean, it is easy to focus them down with high volume of fire, but that 3-up invul save sometimes makes them not as juicy of a target on the table. Another advantage with these as well, compared to a lot of the other threats that can find their way into the list, like we'll talk about that a little bit later, I find the Zoanthropes can also get overlooked quite easily with a lot of the other faster threats or bigger, more deadly monsters that can fly forward. So Zoanthropes can kind of take advantage of not taking too much heat early on and lay down some of those strong smites onto the table. So really awesome to have that available to you. And positioning as well. Zoanthropes can advance and move and still cast psychic powers, just like any psyker. And they also fly, so they're very mobile in terms of how they can move around. And talking about positioning as well, Zoanthropes work in a unique way that you actually select which Zoanthrope is going to cast the power. We're going to look at that in more detail, so I won't talk about that yet when we look at positioning and how we can best use these guys on the table. So we'll talk about that more in detail later in the video. But generally speaking, that is the overall advantages with the Zoanthrope unit. So let's talk about the disadvantages now. All right, so let's talk disadvantages in regards to these Zoanthropes. So the first thing up front is the point cost with these guys. Clocking in at 50 points per model, you really need to spend a lot to get the most out of them, which kind of brings us right into the next point in terms of disadvantages with the Zoanthrope. In that, to get the most out of them, you need to, at least in my opinion and experience thus far, have at least 5 Zoanthropes to effectively make the unit work. So that's a 250 point investment right there. The reason I say 5 is because as you, again, lose Zoanthropes, you lose out on the damage from the smites, and also getting that extra power that you can use. So for example, if you're running Psychic Scream as a secondary power to get maximum mortal wound output, and you only have 4 Zoanthropes, as soon as you lose that first one, you lose it on D3 damage and also the ability to cast a second power. You can still spend a CP to cast another power with the unit, but CP is quite often needed for other things in the Tyranid list, rather than just slapping out D3 mortal wounds, which you would normally get if you had a larger unit of Zoanthropes to absorb a bit more damage. So in my opinion, if you do use Zoanthropes, you really need to go all in. I said 5+ with them. I found running 6 to be the most effective because, again, they tend to get overlooked, at least for the first few turns, unless your opponent really knows about them, and you can get a lot of psychic damage out with them. So I know we're talking about disadvantages now, but if done right, you can do a lot of mortal wounds over the course of the game if you have other targets that are more of a threat priority for your opponent. I had one game in the past where I think I had a unit of 6 Zoanthropes, and it was something, I think it was 18 or 20 mortal wounds they had put out. I think the game was over turn 4, so that is rolling very well as well and getting lots of powers off consistently, which is great. But the opportunity is there to do that. So again, disadvantage is having to have a larger unit, so keeping that in mind, it is a bit more of a points investment, and depending on how your list is being built, you may not have the points to spare to drop it on a full unit of 6 Zoanthropes. It kind of is also a bit of an issue there, because it is, again, a lot to invest into the unit, and losing out on that damage output, it really hurts when looking at other things. And the other big issue is that if your opponent has any form of psychic defense, they can get shut down very easily. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the positioning section in the video a little later on, and ways to kind of mitigate your opponent having some psychic defense. But on a whole, if they do have ways to deny, it really can affect the Zoanthropes, because if their Super Smite gets denied, that's basically their only form of damage being negated. And if your list doesn't have a ton of forms of damage and you're kind of relying on the Zoanthropes to do that, it is a little bit of a risk. So it's something to keep in mind. While it is very enticing to see that, D3 plus 3 mortal wounds coming through, if it does get shut down, even for a turn or two, it really impacts the effectiveness of the Zoanthrope. So let's say turn 1, you don't get the power off, it gets denied, for example. That's a lot of mortal wounds missed out on, then you lose, say, a Zoanthrope or 2 into the next turn. You've already lost it on the super duper smite, and you're only down to kind of a super smite now. So just kind of keep that in mind again when building using the Zoanthrope. So you really have to position them well and try and again plan to avoid some of the damage as well. There's another way to kind of avoid this issue, and that's bringing a Neurothrope. Is it required to bring a Neurothrope to run the Zoanthropes? In my opinion, no. Being that I always start my smites with these guys as well. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more detail when we look at positioning and actually using them on the table. So I think that covers all the disadvantages in my eyes with them. So if you had to ask, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? I would say yes, but you need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into in this regard. Is it taking them a guarantee you're going to do a ton of damage? No. But again, if you're smart and play them right, your cards may just work out in favor for you. So we're going to talk about the high fleets next and go over the advantages for a few of them that can benefit the unit of Zoanthropes. All right, so let's talk high fleets with the Zoanthrope. So in my opinion, there's really only 2 fleets that truly benefit the Zoanthropes themselves. Is the Zoanthrope a unit that you build based off your high fleet? In my opinion, no. Again, there's some benefits that you get with the high fleet, but on a whole, the Zoanthropes are going to work with their intended use no matter what you pick. In terms of fleets that truly benefit the Zoanthrope, in my opinion, the one that stands out the most is Leviathan, being that the Zoanthropes are synapse creatures, which again, I didn't really mention earlier, is a bit of an advantage. So you do get extra synapse by taking Zoanthropes, so you kind of fulfill that role as well. So that is, I guess, an advantage. So if you said I missed that one, there you go. So getting that Feel No Pain adds to their durability, and again, makes them very ideal for holding objectives in the mid or backfield while getting those longer range smites coming down. So Leviathan definitely benefits the Zoanthrope in my opinion. The other one that is very good is Kraken, solely because you just get the 3d6 advance, again, where the Zoanthropes have fly and can choose which Zoanthrope casts the power like the model. You can do some positioning shenanigans and guarantee yourself a decent advance for the most part, for talking average dice there with the Kraken. Outside of that, none of the other fleets truly benefit the Zoanthrope as a unit. Again, I don't really think you have to base your high fleet around the Zoanthrope. I think the rest of the list would more determine that. So if you're thinking about, I'm going to build my list around the Zoanthrope in terms of Hive Fleet. I would advise against that and just kind of have the Zoanthropes more of a supporting role in that regard when looking at which Hive Fleet and list to build around these Zoanthropes. All right, so let's quickly talk about the overall role of the Zoanthrope and how it kind of fits into the Tyranid army as a whole. So this isn't so much a section to talk about how it fits into every single list, but generally the role that the Zoanthrope fulfills on a wider view of everything. So Zoanthropes, in my opinion, focus more so on a supporting role. They're great at holding objectives. They tend to stick around the midfield. Again, I didn't really mention it in the disadvantage, but they are not good at melee, so it's obviously not a unit that you want flying forward. However, they are durable and can hold objective holders. So they are decent damage output as well. So I would generally say they're more of a supporting role. So they can kind of fulfill a few different roles within a list. They can hold objectives, they can toss synapse out as well. And again, if you pair it with the right Hive Fleet, such as Leviathan that we just talked about, you can increase their durability. So if you're looking for something to fulfill a durable role within your list, Zoanthropes can definitely jump into that slot and get the job done when looking at that as an option, as well as you're looking for something just to kind of get a little bit of gravy, I would say, in terms of damage. It's, again, not something you're going to 100% rely on, but when it does go off, it is some tough damage to mitigate, especially for armies that don't have any sort of psychic defense. So on a whole, a supporting role is where I would categorize these Zoanthropes, and when including them in your list, keep that in mind, as that's generally the spot they find themselves in most lists, I would say. All right, so let's talk psychic powers as well as stratagems. There's a few key stratagems that can really maximize the effectiveness of the Zoanthrope and take advantage of their ability to advance and cast powers for their damage output. In terms of powers, the one I would recommend taking on the Zoanthropes, which is my default, is the Psychic Scream power. Now, the only time I wouldn't take this on the Zoanthropes as my secondary power, again, if you're running a unit of 4 or more, is if I have a Flying Hive Tyrant. Reason for that is the Flying Hive Tyrant can get better positioning and fly ahead and cast that power. Generally, you may have the Zoanthropes kind of positioned back farther where they have a longer range smite potentially, but so that's the one thing to keep in mind when you're trying to decide if these guys are the ones to go with Psychic Scream or not. Outside of that, I kind of would choose whatever supporting role needs it most. Due to the range with some of the powers, I potentially would take Catalyst on these guys, where it is a little longer range than a few of the other powers, but generally speaking, I would put that more so on like Swarmlord if I brought him. My go-to psychic powers from Swarmlord is Catalyst and Onslaught, being that he is double launching things. So Catalyst and Onslaught are two powers that I don't really use on Zoanthropes. Again, I find the Psychic Scream on them is most effective because you really want to hammer out the damage potential with them, depending on how many psychic units you have as well. Even doubling down on Psychic Scream, say on one, if you brought 2 Tyrants, taking it on these guys as well as a Tyrant, just in case, say, you lose some of these guys, you can still take advantage of it with the Tyrant, or potentially the Tyrant is using Smite and another power as well. So just some things to consider. Like, outside of that, I really don't think there's like a go-to power over the other ones. It really comes down to what the rest of your list is built like and what you need to utilize within that. But I prefer making these guys just mortal wound gunboats per se, so I like taking Psychic Scream myself. Now, in terms of stratagems, a few key ones that really can boost the effectiveness of Zoanthropes, and they're relatively CP friendly, being that they're only 1 CP compared to some of the other stratagems that cost 2 CP to make other units work very effectively. The biggest standout is Metabolic Overdrive. Reason being is that there is no limitation on casting power, so these guys can move in advance a second time with the potential of taking some mortal wounds, but generally speaking, on average dice, you're not going to lose a Zoanthrope, being that you roll a dice for each model. On a 1, you take a mortal wound. Again, if these guys are Leviathan, there's a chance to even mitigate that, but on a whole, I don't think it's too much risk in casting or using that stratagem. So you can double these guys' movement. Again, if it's Kraken, you can get a guaranteed decent advance roll, and really fly these guys around the table and potentially snipe some targets. And when I say snipe, you'll see what I mean when we talk about positioning in just a bit. Again, where you can choose which Zoanthrope casts the power. You can kind of like chain them out, use terrain to block line of sight, and very specifically choose which Zoanthrope is going to target something. So Metabolic Overdrive is really a key one to use with these Zoanthropes. Outside of that, you can use the psychic power, the stratagem to cast a secondary power if you're down to only 3 Zoanthropes and you really need to get some extra damage if you say have psychic scream on these guys. Another one just to quickly talk about it, because I know someone's going to be wondering about it, is the stratagem. I can't remember the name right off the top of my head. I had it written down here, but I don't have my paper beside me. But it is the psychic stratagem for these Zoanthropes, the one specific to these guys. I think it's called like Psychic Fisher or something like that. But what it does, you need to have at minimum 3 units of Zoanthropes, and we're talking right there, that is 450 points just to make use of a stratagem that really doesn't put a whole lot of damage. The only advantage is you don't need to make a psychic roll, but if you're dishing that many points out, that's 3. I almost think rather than spending ACP, you could roll and do 3 units worth of smite at 24-inch range. I don't know, it really doesn't have much use in my eyes. I know some have used it in the past. I've seen some people share experiences with it where it worked out in their favor, but I think it's too much of a points investment to make a gimmicky stratagem go off. So if you're looking at that and thinking, oh, this could be sweet, to be honest, don't bother with it. Save your points. Take a single unit maxed if you're already willing to spend that much on Zoanthropes. In my opinion, that is, so feel free to try it for yourself, but based off my experiences using the unit, I think CP can be better spent elsewhere in addition to points on different units or upgrades as needed. And that's pretty much it in terms of psychic powers and stratagems that really benefit this unit on a whole. Also, very quickly to touch on adaptive physiologies, just in case you're wondering that. There really isn't one that benefits a Zoanthrope that would warrant taking it, being that they have the 3-up invul. Needing to get into combat isn't really a huge thing. They're already synapse creatures, and when I say into combat, like having that heroic intervention, it's just there's nothing really worth spending on. There's so many other units that are like very commonly seen in a lot of lists that can take advantage of the Hive Fleet adaptive physiology. So if you're wondering about that, don't bother. These guys are good to go without any adaptive physiologies, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about positioning here. One thing I'm actually going to do too in this, just a quick side note, is the gimbal that I have is a cool tracking feature for the app built in for it. So for example, I'm going to highlight this guy right here, and then as I move him around, the gimbal follows. You see hands-free movement. So, so kind of cool for that. The only reason I'm just mentioning that is during this video, if you notice that and you think of any cool ideas, I'm really trying to enhance the Tactica videos and provide a cool overhead view. Again, where I'm going to expand out equipment in the future, I plan on having an overhead tripod holder where the gimbal can actually go, and then we can highlight things and actually move them around and have the camera follow. So there's some cool features. Again, just really trying to provide some high-level quality content for you all and really enhance the viewing pleasure for you. But jumping into the section of this video more on topic is positioning and how you can use the Zoanthropes to snipe different characters, and also how you can use the selecting which guy casts the power option to really enhance how this unit can work and take advantage of the rules to their most. So let's take a look at this unit here. Zoanthropes only move 5 inches. So if we pan up very quickly, we can see in front of us we've got a captain, 3 blade guard, and over this blade we've got a chaplain on this side. As we know, smite works by targeting the closest visible enemy unit. So now, in a way to keep our options open and also to smite particular targets, we can take advantage of these Zoanthropes selecting which model casts. So for example, we only have 5-inch movement. I've kind of pre-measured, I know I messed this guy up, but 5 inches would get him right over here. But the rest of the guys kind of may not make that far. So we've rolled our advance roll, we got a 2. So that gives us 7-inch movement. So if we were to follow our friend right here and move the unit, so he would move over 7 here, with the rest of his guys being daisy chained along, and you'll see why in a second. I am daisy chaining them to keep our options open. So now, in relation to this side, if the whole idea, if we're going to ignore the chaplain on that side, is that I want to slap the captain with the D3+3 smites but all those blade guard in the way. Now the Ultramarine player here thought, okay, I'm keeping him back, I'm safe. I know that this unit, even getting 6, couldn't move all the guys to move over here. However, the nice thing with Zoanthropes is you actually select a single model, and that model will be the one that casts the power. So based off positioning here, the blade guard are fully blocked out from the model, and then casting the power from this Zoanthrope would send the smite straight into the captain, potentially killing him in one shot with some decent rolls. Now, the other thing through with daisy chaining here and say having the chaplain on this side is you kind of have your options open in terms of who you want to target. For example, if we have, say, just hypothetically, we'll grab this guy here. Actually, here, we'll go grab Mr. Neurothrope from this side. And let's just say the Neurothrope is sitting right here. Now, for example, the captain is on this side. He's a high priority target. And for simplicity's sake, we'll say that he is worth some victory points, just to kind of emphasize this example. It's a little situational here, but again, I'm just trying to like really play it out and talk you through the advantages of positioning with the Zoanthropes. So if I got a Neurothrope here, this captain is weak. He's got, let's just say, 1 wound remaining. So good chance that this Neurothrope could smite in and kill him off, thus really making the smite of these guys more effective elsewhere, where it has higher damage potential. So with a Neurothrope could kill him, then you still have the option of, like, let's just say we're using Assassinate, for example. We want to kill characters, so we've got this guy here and the chaplain there. Stringing these guys out, we can choose who's going to be effective. So let's just say the Neurothrope went to get him, but failed. The captain gives all kinds of buffs. I know the chaplain does too. Potentially, maybe he was a bad example here, but let's just say we really want to kill the captain. There's a reason for that. Like where he buffs the blade guard unit there, for example. And we really want to get rid of that buff to, again, reduce their effectiveness, right? So let's just say the Neurothrope, the intention for this turn is the Neurothrope wants to kill him with Smite. We have these guys chained along here for him to cast Smite over this way. However, the Neurothrope fails. We then have the option to, instead of choosing him, move over, select that Neurothrope with positioning, and take him out. Or again, maybe, for example, the Neurothrope removes Mr. Captain here. We think to ourselves, okay, a single chaplain isn't going to have as much damage potential as, let's say, 3 Blade Guard veterans coming in full strength. So then we still have options now. So where this Neurothrope or Zoanthrope couldn't see any the Blade Guard, we can then select this one and then choose those guys. So I know this is a very kind of blatantly easy, like, oh, bang, bang there. But depending on the table and your terrain, you can use this to your advantage and really choose how your Zoanthropes are going to select targets based off where your opponent is, or even just use this effect to really snipe out certain targets with the unit. Because I know it is a large unit sometimes, but the way you chain it out, potentially you can have it so a single Zoanthrope could see a unit that's rather far away and take advantage of terrain, for example. Another method of doing this, I've done this a few times in the past. We're just going to slide this over here, the terrain, and now let's just say, hypothetically, we're going to pan up and over here, scooch on over. Let's say we've got a unit of Blade Guard down through the window there. We can see them, we can see their heads. And then we've got a captain farther back, who is the one we want to target. And our unit of Zoanthropes, let's just say, jumps up into the building here. We're going to use these smaller ones just because they fit better. And they're up front here, and they want to target the captain. Now, normally they could see the captain here, but they got these guys in the way. You can actually take the Zoanthropes and position them up higher. For example, this Zoanthrope now, again, we'll just completion's sake, coherency, can kind of chill back this way. And we'll move the camera over a bit. So the tip of his head, you actually see the captain. As you can see, we're looking at this Zoanthrope right here. You can see the captain. Trying again. I'm really trying to show this the best I can. So I hope it's working. Again, I'm trying to show off a new style of filming. And again, unit coherency. This guy down here. He can see the captain, but cannot see the Blade Guard. So again, you can kind of like jank the unit around and like really use terrain for your advantage. I know this might not be the best example, but depending on, again, on the terrain, it's you have to kind of look at it and use your own Tyranid Tactical intuition and figure out the best play for that. So on a whole, that's pretty much covers everything in relation to Zoanthropes. I hope this little last section was visually easy to follow along with and give you a good idea of how to use the Zoanthropes effectively in terms of positioning. I think it's one of the cool abilities that they have that a lot of people overlook or aren't expecting, especially if you haven't played Zoanthropes before. A lot of people don't think to target them first. Even with some forewarning, I've told people kind of what their damage output, but again, like running lists with Dimicarans or flying high turns, the Zoanthropes definitely tend to get overlooked when compared to those other targets, which is very understandable. But then these guys come in kind of low-key, slap with a ton of psychic damage, and again, positioning, you can kind of keep them back away from enemy targets as well. So that's the other thing too. You really want to keep them away from denial range of other units, other psychic units, because you really want to maximize their effectiveness, but at the same time you need them to target certain units. Like, you don't want them sitting back just smashing fodder all day, so you kind of have to kind of skirt them around the outskirts of the table, daisy chain them as need be. And I mean, based off this video, you can use those tactics to your own advantage and make Zoanthropes work for you. So I hope you really enjoyed this. I'm looking to up the Tyranid Tactica content to be a little bit more frequent, and again, experiment with some filming styles with the new equipment that the Patron support has allowed us to purchase, and provide you high quality Tyranid content, and all for the hive mind, and continue to advance the Tyranid presence, biomass for all. You know, enjoy, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means a lot. Don't forget to just drop a like, subscribe, or comment. It does help the channel out a lot, and those little things still mean the world to me as well. So we'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for your support as always, everyone. Have a great day.